Hey there, Groovesters. Ridgely here with another Groove Growth program. Super excited. This is going to be a very fun ride. Buckle up. I'm here with Olivia Parr-Rud, and we are talking about a super interesting topic, which is bringing love into business. Now, Olivia is a data scientist with years and years of experience of analyzing data and coming up to some pretty wild conclusions. And Olivia, I know everybody wants to hear how we go from data scientist to bringing love into business. So tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, to kick us off. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, happy to. So I was born at a very early age. And when I was young, I was really creative. And because of that, I had a hard time focusing on one thing. Today, they probably call it ADD and give me some kind of a drug, but it really is just rampant creativity. But because of that, I had a hard time reading, and reading was really pushed on me. I was the third daughter, and my whole family were avid readers. So I think it was a bit of a rebellion as well. And I liked puzzles, I liked math. So I ended up studying math and never liked school because it was so constraining and I was daydreaming all the time. All right, so I got through school, had a lot of tragedy. My father died when I was 5 in a plane crash. And then I lost my mother in a way because she was always busy and working and to support us. And I was just starting to kind of get a good sense of myself. Went through high school, studying math. Partway through college, started really finding my rhythm and doing well. And then I was in a car accident and spent a year in the hospital. And during that, I was back then, I broke my femur in 2 places and ruptured my spleen, all these things. So as a result, they didn't want to do surgery. So they put me in traction. That's what they did back then. And then I was in a body cast for a few months. Total almost a year, and then another year with a walker and crutches. So that sort of plays into something later, but just wanted to bookmark that. So then I went back to college, got a degree in math, but at the same time, I was really searching I was starting to look into healing work and doing some spiritual searching. Right a year after I got out of the hospital, my mother died. So I was kind of on my own, really lost. A lot of abandonment issues that I learned later in therapy were why I, made lots of perhaps not the greatest decisions. Ended up marrying a man from college who was a really good guy, another wounded soul. And we started doing this spiritual searching together. And I started to love reading and really got to a point, had a few children, and then wanted to just kind of do something productive. And I really thought, okay, I'm going to become a psychotherapist, use all this spiritual knowledge that I learned, right? And a girlfriend of mine who was helping women re-enter the workforce after raising kids said to me, you should use your math skills because it's really hard to find a job as a social worker or a psychotherapist. I mean, I would have had to go 9 years to get a PhD in psychology. And so I knew I wasn't going to probably be that marketable with a 2 or 4 year additional degree. So I ended up doing the practical thing and going back to school in business. And I was in Arizona at the time. ASU had a program. So I ended up getting a master's degree in statistics.
Jeez, wow.
And got recruited. This was in 91. I got recruited to a credit card bank in San Francisco. So I had worked just a little bit after college in a credit office, and I really liked it. I liked business. I liked the action and the meat of being able to actually do things, in contrast to school where you just sat and listened, right? So I was excited to get back into the corporate world. But after being an earth mom for 20 years and this kind of open-hearted spiritual seeker, I landed in this corporate setting in San Francisco, and I really thought I'd landed on a foreign planet. It was really fear-based, very cutthroat. Now, I had a specialty from my degree, which they needed and wanted, which is kind of like, it's called predictive modeling. Logistic regression was the type of modeling I did. And that's what they use often to build your FICO score, or, predict whether you're going to vote a certain way or respond to an offer. That's the underlying. Now there's a lot of other techniques, but logistic regression is still one of the strongest. Okay, so I built them models. The first year I saved the bank $17 million, got promoted, and was really in a lot of fear. At the same time, I was commuting an hour and 40 minutes. My husband's health was failing. But so I ended up moving or relocating, taking a job transfer back east, which is where I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I could be closer to family because my husband's health was suffering, and started just moving around to different banks and other companies because my work was now in high demand. I wrote a book called Data Mining Cookbook in 1999. I guess it came out in 2000, 2001, which set me on the global stage. Okay, so now I have experience in a lot of different companies, and I started to see the companies that treated their people with kindness and compassion and just were nicer actually got more out of their employees. Like, we all worked harder, we were all more creative, but I couldn't tie it to any financial. It sort of made sense that they did better financially, but I couldn't really tie it together, right? So I ended up doing that for several years, went off on my own, and then wanted to write about what I was noticing, this pattern. So I started doing a lot of research, and I read Thomas Freeman's book. Do you remember The World is Flat? Where he talks about, so it was the first time I felt like my two worlds came together, my corporate and my spiritual world, because what it basically told me was that data, technology, all these new things that were available were making businesses have to evolve more quickly. So if you think about it, 7,500 years ago, a factory, the CEO could possibly go and maybe do the job of other people. A worker was pretty easy to replace. They weren't very skilled. Where today, even the lowest level worker knows how to use a computer. And if the CFO or Chief Technology Officer got upset with the CEO, they could do a lot of damage, right? So it really matters that people trust each other, that they can hear each other. And to me, it all comes down to really, I think of it as love, which in Wikipedia is defined, one of the definitions is compassion and caring, right? So I started to see this and I thought, wow, I want to write about this. So I got, my first book was with Wiley. So they took my second proposal, but they called it Business Intelligence Success Factors, which was a little bit of a stodgy title. But the research is great and it's still out there on Amazon. But I went into quantum physics and evolutionary biology and how things that are changing, that's where you really get all the new ideas, but you have to have order out of chaos. That's another concept that really speaks to the rapid change and how the companies that are doing the best are the ones that empower their people and give them the tools they need, give them the direction, but they don't micromanage, they don't sit over them, they really just empower them and they reward them and treat them well. And there's a great story about Campbell's Soup. I think it was in 2001 or two, they were really suffering, their stock was tanking. And Douglas Conant went in. He later formed Nightingale Conant, which is all a bunch of really empowerment audios and things. But he went in there as a consultant, as CEO, and to turn the company around because their stock was tanking and they were known as an old beleaguered brand at the time. And what he found was that their employee morale was really low. Their employee satisfaction was just abysmal. Most were actively unengaged. And so he spent 6 months just talking to people. And at the end of 6 months, he just had a simple recommendation. And that was each manager should just talk to their employee every day, tell them they're valued, ask them what they need, give them a little update on the company progress. And in a year, their stock turned around and they had, I think, 70% actively engaged employees. the stock bounced back, and the rest is history. So there's just so much evidence of this. And I think we can all even just imagine. I think a lot of companies that don't do well are run by leaders that perhaps are wounded within themselves and just need to be highly controlling and fear-based. But if they could open their hearts and make more money being a loving manager or just caring and compassionate, it would affect their employees, their family, even the world at large. So that's kind of what brought me to this, was this bringing together this idea. And I know there's a lot of people out there doing conscious business for the right reasons, but I want to reach those CEOs that just are real hard and fast and go, you can actually make more money if you act in a way that's caring and compassionate. And then of course they have to take it on and maybe do their own healing work. But to me, it's a no-brainer. So
yeah, no, I love that. And I can tell you that at Groove, we certainly live that. We love our team members. We love the culture that we've created is super great. We love our community members. So we have 80 members on the team right now, working on stuff all the time. And we have 600,000 people in the community. So it's a pretty big group, but we're all super mutually empowering of each other. We start out like this marketing meeting this morning. We started out with, okay, what's your number one win of the week so far? What do you got? Show us, give us some love. And then we talk about, what else, what people are working on, what challenges they may have or what have you. And I totally agree. I know. And one of the other things I wanted to share is, of course, in the Groove community, everyone who's here is seeking to build some kind of a business using online marketing. So in a sense, everybody in the Groove community is a CEO. They're the CEO of their little microcosm, whatever that means. And I know that the title of this program is We're All Leaders Now. And I just can't wait to dive in. So let's go. Where are we going with this thing? We're all leaders now. How do we manage ourselves better? How do we organize ourselves? How do we find this love thing and make it happen?
Well, absolutely. So if you think about it, as a CEO and I'm a Groove, I have my website moving to Groove right now, so I'm very excited about it. So as entrepreneurs, we are leaders. We're thought leaders. We're leading teams or, our employees. But I want to also say that even people in large companies are leaders. And it goes back to what I said earlier. And that is that often, like I'll just give myself as an example, when I got to this bank and I was building these models, nobody else knew how to do it. So I had to think of myself as a leader and know that I was carrying this huge influence in the company. If my model did not work, it could cost the company millions of dollars. And so I had to think of myself as a leader, and how do I build trust? How do I get them to follow my lead, basically, and use what I've created? And I think that's true in many, many companies. Now, technology companies have an advantage because they're usually not bogged down in legacy systems and people. But one of my friends who works for he retired, but he was with one of the big old insurance companies. He said they have such a hard time empowering people. It's like the leadership team doesn't want to let go of control. And some of the new upstart insurance companies are starting to really hurt their profits, but they can't get rid of that old top-down fear-based leadership style. And when they empower people, this is when we all become leaders. If we're empowered to make decisions and do things that nobody understands, we really are leaders. And we can be leaders even if we don't have the title, even if we don't manage anyone. If anybody's looking to us for guidance, we're leaders. We're thought leaders. We're perhaps guiding people. That's a leadership role. So I look at it, I mean, every parent is a leader, right? and we know that life's getting more complex even in that world. So I think in some ways, very few of us would get out of having some role in leadership, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit what are you going to share with us in terms of how to really get this going in our own lives? Well, what can we do to be better leaders, more empowering leaders, both for ourselves and those around us? What does that look like?
I think one of the main things we need to develop is self-awareness. So I actually have a free ebook on my website, oliviapr.com, if anybody wants, called The 5 Levels of Self-Awareness. And so if you think about it, when we notice we react to things and then we have regrets, that's because we perhaps have something within us that isn't resolved, some kind of something that triggers us. To be an effective leader, we have to be responsible for our own reactions to things all the time. Like that is essential for being able to be a leader and not be reactive, because we're always going to be challenged. Especially the more leadership we take on, the more we'll be responsible for other people's, say, response to us. And being a leader means we're going to get challenged, and we may get tasks that are difficult. So the first thing we really have to do is work on our self-awareness. So I kind of came up with 5 levels, and I'll just describe them quickly so people you can. And I think in our lives, we're probably at different levels, maybe in different contexts. So think about maybe in some areas, or somebody where their life is a mess and they have no idea why, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't know what they're doing that's affecting other people. So that's level 1. There's ways to learn about that by getting feedback from others if they want. Level 2 is where you figure out right after you do something that you regret it, right? So you're kind of starting to be aware, but maybe after the fact. Level 3 is where you're doing it and you're realizing it as you're doing it. So if you've ever said something and while you're saying it, your mind is thinking, I can't believe this is coming out of my mouth. So I'm sure that's happened to everybody one time or another. Or you're eating something and you're going, I shouldn't be doing this, right? So that's like in time awareness. Then level 4 is you catch yourself right before, like you're tempted, but you go, oh, no, that didn't work well in the last time I did it. So we start to refine how we act. And then level 5 is we're not tempted to do that behavior again. So it can cover a myriad of behaviors, but if we...
It sounds a lot to me like, Olivia, I was thinking to myself, as I'm listening, I'm going, sounds a lot like this applies to marriages.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, really, it's like everything where we're with a partner, absolutely, because we're getting mirrored all the time. So yeah, this can really help with those kinds of relationships for sure. Yeah.
And so what is the best way for someone to go through those levels okay, if you, no matter where you recognize yourself on the spectrum, whether you're a mess, whether you're regretting things after the fact because you have some tiny bit of awareness, or you're realizing as you're doing things in real time, oh no, I'm doing it again, or wherever you are, even if you catch yourself right before, what are the techniques or things that people can focus on to kind of move themselves up the scale, if you will, so you finally get to a place where you're, as you said, not tempted to do that anymore?
Great question. So I have a lot of tricks and techniques in my ebook, but just for starters, if there's things you regret, or people are staying away from you, let's say, and you have no idea why, you really have to have the courage to ask for feedback. And if that's terrifying to you, then I would actually seek out somebody that perhaps does trauma work, because there's probably something buried in your past or in your lineage or whatever that's really got you stuck or behaving in a way that doesn't serve you. Like I said, I lost my parents very young, so I had abandonment issues. And so if anybody tried to get close to me, I would push them away, but I wasn't even aware of it. And one day I heard a saying by Groucho Marx. He said, I would never belong to a club that would have someone like me as a member. And I went, oh my God, that's me, And so I knew I just had to do a lot of self-love work. And I did audio tapes for years, just listening to this saying, I love myself and things like that. And so that's a good place to start. If your life's a mess, just really look at ways to learn to love yourself and perhaps work through trauma if that's in your past. And then when you're starting to regret it afterwards, just be grateful for that. Have gratitude that you realize it after the fact. If you've insulted someone, say you're sorry. Just don't be, it really takes a lot of vulnerability. I love Brene Brown's work around that because we have so much shame. We're sort of shamed in some families, especially if we make a mistake. And really that's how we grow. So we have to be vulnerable. When we can love ourselves enough to be vulnerable, that's how we can really learn and grow. And I feel like I'm attracted to people who are vulnerable, who make mistakes. They seem more real to me. So I actually respect people more when they do, when everything doesn't go perfectly and they, still show up again and again. And then when you start to notice it in time, again, be grateful. And when you catch yourself before, celebrate, like make it a big deal. And then when you're not tempted, you're kind of in the swim zone. But I had a thing, and as a data scientist, I was very oriented into my left brain. It took me a lot of time to kind of open my heart and right brain and feel safe. So I was one of those people. I got paid good money by corporations to solve problems. And so I'm sure everybody knows someone like this, that people came to me and they wanted to share their problem. I'd give them a solution. Or even people would just be sharing in a group. I always had a solution. And I just thought this was great, right? And then I remember one time a woman, one of my friends came to me and she goes, not everybody wants your suggestions. And I mean, I didn't even ask for feedback. I just got it because she cared about me. And I went, really? Well, what do I do if I know exactly how to solve her problem? And she said, well, maybe ask if they want a suggestion. And I went, oh, okay, that's reasonable. And so I started to do that. I got better at remembering to do that. And then that really helped me. But I remember one time too, that my sister-in-law called me and we would talk a lot, and I would solve her problems. And so one time she called, she goes, Olivia, I want to share what's going on, but I don't want you to fix it. And I went, okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, really? Like, you don't want my brilliant solutions. And then as she spoke, and it was like she was processing, and she came up with a solution that was actually better than I would have come up with. And I thought, oh, I now get it, and then I've done a lot of studying and practice about just holding space and being a good listener. And now I can see how I like that too. And that I don't want people to solve my problems unless I ask them. And so that was like a big process of self-awareness in my life. And I think there's others too, especially if we're really good at solving problems, to kind of take that and put it on the back burner when you're in a emotional or, friendship relationship or, social setting where people may not always want you to solve their problems.
Yeah, I think it's very, very common. I can tell you as a spiritual leader in my community, my wife and I, we have 160 people that we take care of. And our biggest job by far is listening.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing we do. My wife especially, she's even better at it than I am. She spends a lot of time on the phone taking care of people. And she basically says, oh, okay, well, I had a chance to listen to so-and-so. She doesn't even say I talked to so-and-so anymore. She says, I had a chance to listen to so-and-so. I had a chance to listen to so-and-so today. And there's a massive seeming need or yearning from so many people to be heard. They don't really want you to solve their problem. They just want to be heard. I frankly am okay with it. I've trained myself to do this because it's part of my role as a spiritual leader, but I'm not going to tell you that I like it all that much. Right.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm happy to hold space for people. I'm happy to go through the process. I'm delighted if it really touches them in some way. But if you were to ask me if I enjoy it, Probably the truthful answer is no.
Yeah. Well, I don't offer coaching for that reason. So I say I mentor people. And when I take a client, I'll just say, I'm really good at listening, and I want to be able to offer suggestions from time to time. Are you okay with that? Because for me, it's hard. And I guess it is because we're probably solving problems in our brain. And, maybe that's just like,
Yeah.
it's good. And some people do appreciate it. So we just have to find the right people, I think. Yeah.
Well, just for fun,
Okay.
I'm now going to explain to you why your brain is the way it is based on what happened to you and what your mind type is as a result of those activities. And then I'm going to tell you all about yourself, and it's going to come across like I'm some kind of a weird guru, but I'm not. It's just that I studied brain biology and I've written 5 books on the topic. So here's what happened. When your father passed away, you suddenly were largely on your own because mom had to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to figure out how to survive. You had to solve problems at that small age. And you became unconsciously competent. So problem solvers, natural problem solvers, are unconsciously competent. If you ask them, well, how do you do that thing of coming up with solutions? They go, well, I just do it. It just comes to me. But getting a problem solver, a true problem solver, to explain how they go through the process, hardly any of them can. Now, I can explain it to you because I studied this stuff, but it happened because when you were not at a conscious thought place, you were figuring out survival mechanisms that involved making these choices, sorting through things, etc. Here's the funny thing about problem solvers. Now, I wonder if you have this experience periodically. When problem solvers do not have enough data, their brains kind of go into molasses mode and they kind of slow down and don't function properly. It's a really weird phenomenon. So problem solvers will find themselves sometimes staring at a screen. Like, why am I staring at this screen? I've been looking at this for 5 minutes. I don't know what is going on here. Oh, I don't have enough data. And here is the way that a problem solver can jumpstart their brain. Put in some more data. Get this, Olivia. This I discovered a couple of years ago. The data does not have to be any good. It can be bad, because it's just the process of putting in the data that triggers the mechanism that gets it back up to speed again, and then you're back rolling all over again. So anybody who's a true problem solver, if they find themselves in that paralysis mode where their brain is kind of shut down a little bit, Google something, call somebody, go talk to somewhere, read something. All you need is more data, and the brain kicks back in again.
Interesting. I've actually worked on developing my intuition a lot too. So now I can kind of tap into that. And maybe I'm getting data from there. That's really interesting.
Right? So, yeah, no, this is in this particular area, you're smack in the middle of my personal wheelhouse. So talking about how problem solvers work and the fact that we see things quicker than others do. We process data at warp speed. And of course, we want to share it. And so one of the things problem solvers need to do is learn to go lock it down until it's warranted. And oh, by the way, you probably had this experience too. If you're in a group and you speak first, nobody else wants to go after you. They all say, oh yeah, what Olivia said. No, I agree with what Olivia said. So problem solvers that are really good problem solvers have to train themselves to speak last. Otherwise, they will not get the collective benefit of the group, because everybody will say, yeah, what she said.
Interesting. So let me ask you, because I did a little bit of brain research, and I used to actually push the idea of creativity to data scientists, because a lot of them were very linear, and I was always this real creative child. So I started basically coming up with creative ways to use statistics. And what I realized, and so I'd love to know what you know about it, is that it's like the right brain is the pattern recognizer, And that's what I think I'm really good at. Like it might take me longer than some people to get stuff, but once I've got it, I can see relationships and patterns really quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Of course. And it makes sense to you. It's data coming in, going through the ticker. It's whirring, it's whirring, it's whirring. Oh, problem solvers have a tendency to do this. Well, based on what I just heard in the room, if this, and this, well, then that leads to this, and this. And therefore, the potential outcomes are this or this. And I recommend this.
Interesting.
And it's super easy for you. You do that like with, the greatest of ease, and everybody else is like, wow. And one of the things that problem solvers have a challenge with is understanding that other people don't see the world the way problem solvers do. They just don't.
That's so interesting, because even as a child, I would see two people arguing and I could understand where the disconnect was, but they could not see it. And I would think, why doesn't everybody see what I see? And I didn't know. So that must have been it.
Unconscious competence.
Yeah.
That is the problem solved.
Johari window, right? Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a Johari window.
Well,
exactly.
I would also, sorry, I was just gonna say, I would also tell people, especially data scientists, like, how when you're struggling with a problem and you can't get the answer, and then you go jogging or you take a nap and suddenly the solution comes. And it's because that's goes into the right brain, or the part of the brain that is doing all the pattern and integration, but we can't track it. And I remember Thomas Edison is famous for, when he was trying to come up with different methods for the light bulb, he would purposely sit in a chair with a spoon with marbles or something and as soon as they'd take a nap, and as soon as he'd fall asleep, the spoon would fall, make noise, and wake him up, because he would get his best ideas in that light sleep of napping. And so he would just do that all day long to come up with ideas. Does that fit in with the problem solving pattern?
So I don't remember what the chemical in the brain is, but I can tell you that some of the greatest philosophers to ever live that figure out the meaning of life, like Nietzsche and others like him, they're walkers. And there's a book, in fact, called Walking with Nietzsche, which is all about Nietzsche walking all over Switzerland in the mountains. Why is that? Because the methodical walking puts your brain into a certain state that permits this creative flow to happen. And so as a writer, when I need to write something, whether it's creative writing or it's even an offer for a sales thing that we're doing or whatever, first thing I do is go take a walk. And it's not a creative walk. I walk the same way around my neighborhood every single time in the same direction on the same side of the street, so that it's not about the walking, it's about the permitting of the brain circuitry to open up. Because as I'm walking, I'm not even seeing anything. Normally as a writer, I try my very best to be very aware and see things and to pay attention to everything and to notice details, etc. But when I'm doing the walking, I don't see anything. All I see is the thoughts in my mind going, well, if we did this, if we wrote this way, and this connects with this, and I can see, oh yeah, that's good. And I'll find myself walking down the road going, and all of a sudden I'll be like, yes. Right. And some people are like, something that guy. Well, I just got something.
He's talking to himself.
That's exactly right. I'm having this mental
the
conversation in my brain. So
wow.
Through that process, and that's why some people like to choose to stillness. But I know that walking specifically releases this, that puts your brain into a certain state that allows for more creativity and more openness of ideas. And that's why a lot of the big philosophers, John Dewey was one of them as well, they love to walk.
Yeah, I had a manager that did that. He would just pace the office while we were doing in meetings. He couldn't sit, he would just pace. It's interesting. What about music? Because sometimes when I want to write, I play some background music. I like Sanskrit, chanting and things, and it seems to take a part of my brain and put it aside so that I can be more creative. Does that fit into your model anywhere?
I mean, I don't know enough about that, honestly. So I don't want to say something that I don't uh, have any real knowledge on. I know a lot of people love to work to music and other people just don't.
Yeah.
Um, so interesting.
I can
So what
work to
else?
silence, but I can't work to noise outside, or you know what I mean? So anyway, sorry.
I think we're all unique individuals. So
Yeah.
what else do my groovesters need to know to take their game to the next level and manage themselves as leaders?
So as leaders, I think we all can keep learning. So that I think it used to be that the leader was the person that knew everything and we all had to just follow. But as leaders today, there's just so much new information coming in. I really feel like it's that willingness and hunger just to keep growing, and then you're also modeling for people who may see you as a leader, even if you're not officially their leader. But when you step into that and own who you are, and empower others, you'll be seen as a leader. And then just keep um, being guiding people, but also challenging yourself to keep learning. And one of the things that I like to do in a company, when I was working for larger companies, was find people who I wanted to emulate or learn from, and then just reach out to them and say, hey, could I spend an hour a week just following what you're doing, or learning about how you do what your jobs. So I'm interested in maybe moving into something like that. So as leaders, that's one of the things. And also being open to going into new areas, because the skills we have are less stagnant. We're actually going to be having to learn new skills all the time just because of the changes in technology. So being really good at learning and being agile at learning and letting go of old ways of doing things is really important as a leader.
I can tell you in Groove, that is a billion times more relevant than other places, because we're an ever evolving technology platform. And there is no end to the creativity of Mike Filsame, our CEO, in coming up with the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And the rest of us are scrambling to understand and keep up with, what he and his brain and 30 developers can come up with. You're like, what? I got to learn this too? Oh, man. And I think in the space of online marketing, you really kind of have to get over any phobia of learning new stuff, because you just can't keep up if you do. There's just no way. The speed of development and the next thing, the thing that was relevant 6 months ago, is toast today. And if you're stuck back in that, you're dead.
Exactly. And so I'm transitioning to Groove, and I just had this epiphany maybe a couple of months ago where I realized a website isn't a thing. It's just a bunch of linked landing pages, but we used to have it so structured and so kind of, I wouldn't say hardened, but, just more rigid. And now, Groove really allows me and others to be so much more creative. It's exciting. And I've been with it maybe 6 months, and I've seen what you're talking about with just all the new stuff that's coming. And there was something I needed, and they said, no, but it'll be there in a few months or whatever. It's really exciting.
Yeah, that's right. And it will continue to grow like that for sure. And it's what makes it very exciting, and also, somewhat challenging. We need to be, that's why one of the reasons why Groove Growth is so important for everybody is because you come to Groove Growth for two things. One, to get inspired, and two, to keep your mind expanding, because there's no shortage of learning to do inside the Groove platform for whatever your business is, whatever your service or product is. But we need to also keep developing this guy right here and not get stale, because if this guy stops working, you're definitely not going to be able to keep up with the technology of Groove. There's no way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I even say, if you want to get your right brain going, learn an instrument, or, find something real creative, start painting, just get that part of your brain very agile, because it's going to play, really serves us now to be more creative. And I see Groove as just a palette that you really almost can build anything and make it work. And that's really fun. And then also we need our our rest. Our work-life balance is so much more important now because we can get pulled into working almost constantly, right? There's just so much to do and so much to play with. Yeah.
Well, and especially, I mean, and this, for anybody that's out there watching, especially as you get to be really good at what you do. I mean, I can tell you, I have to constantly say no, because the flow of business and opportunities and whatever that comes at me is nonstop. It is all the time. And some of the projects are huge and super interesting and really exciting. And I'm like, no,
I
no,
know.
no.
Well,
Okay, maybe. No, 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 maybe. You know, and you gotta get super picky. Otherwise, life goes by like this. I was just literally
yeah.
12 hours ago, I said to myself, is it really Thursday afternoon? Where did this week
Yeah.
go? It went, pew! And now, wow. Okay, pay attention, man. It's the middle of May. How did we get to the middle of May? It was like snowing a minute ago, but now it's not. Go figure.
I'd love
All
to
right.
ask you, is the age range in your company pretty young, would you say? Most of them pretty young?
Yeah. Sure. I would say that in the groove community, it goes, I mean, the spectrum is large,
Is
but
it?
where are we going to get most of the people? I think it's in the 20 to 50 range, because people are, they grew up as digital natives, and therefore they have the ability to embrace technology and all of that. And so I think the biggest growth is going to come in that area, but that doesn't stop somebody at 80 from building something in Groove. It just takes a little bit longer to figure it all out.
Yeah. Well, I think I shared with you privately. I turned 71 this year, and I feel
Mhm.
like I'm just getting started. So
Yeah.
I'm doing a pod or a show called the Magical Aging Show. And I think a lot of it is figuring out how we can be leaders and share our wisdom as older adults. And that all needs technology. So I'm really feeling like if people are listening and they think, oh, I'm too old to start doing this, like, you're not. There's so much opportunity still. And I feel like as humans, we're evolving to a higher frequency. I think of it as the love frequency. And that means there's going to be a lot of change coming, and we all need to step up and share why we're here or what is our purpose, really give back and become who all we can be. I think we chose to incarnate, in my belief system, at this amazing time, and we should all share our wisdom no matter how old we are. So
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, as we wrap up, Olivia, thank you so much for the time with our community. I know we have a gift for people. So tell us a little bit about that. It'll be on the button below. As always, guys, go there, check it out, get it. That's why it's there. Tell us a little bit about that.
sure. So I have a gift to help you if you want to share wisdom and be a leader. And it's just go to giftfromolivia.com
We'll just
and
put it in
you'll
the
find,
button. We'll put it
yeah,
in the button.
it's a wisdom bears blueprint. So it's kind of a blueprint for how you can get your wisdom out and using the technology and all the modes that are available today. And then on my website, oliviapr.com, there's a bunch of free ebooks to read about this levels of self-awareness and other ways to connect at a heart level to really be in your heart space in business. Because I think today more than ever, it's safe to be a heart-centered leader. So it's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Groovesters, a heart-centered leaders. That's what we want to be. You heard it from Olivia Parr-Rud. We really appreciate your time, Olivia. Welcome to Groove, by the way. Glad you're here with all of us. That's exciting. And we look forward to much more and to hearing of your successes as we move forward. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.